Hello, welcome to Wednesday's Nots Today with me, Mark Dennison. Thank you for joining us. Here's what we have for you in today's show. Firstly, we'll be heading to Newark to hear how a local restoration company has fixed 6 vandalised and worn town park statues.
Some people don't have the advantage to go to work, or they have mental illnesses and stuff like that, so they like to come to these parks, and we just thought it'd be a great idea to restore something like this, bring it back to the park, and people just come up and go, wow.
More on that shortly. Plus, we'll be talking about how families could again be told to remove tributes around graves in cemeteries across Broxtowe. Families campaigned after council rules looked to clamp down on things like ornaments being displayed in cemeteries, and the council initially agreed to a pause. But this could change at a meeting next week after new recommendations. We'll also be hearing about some of the ambitious plans to create a new art centre, library and leisure centre in Arnold. As part of the Ambition Arnold plan set out by Gedling Borough Council, with the authority asking for the public's thoughts on its proposals. We'll have more on that later in the show. In sport, we'll be catching up with Team Talk regular Charlie McParland to reflect on Forest's end to the season. The Reds missed out on Champions League football following their 1-0 loss to Chelsea. We'll get Charlie's thoughts on what the club need to do to strengthen over the summer. And that'll come after we hear why Nottinghamshire Police have been heading to schools to warn children about the dangers of knife crime.
Group work and do assemblies. The reason why we need to engage with young people is because we're losing a lot of teenagers to knife crime, whether that's victims, whether that's offenders.
So we've got all of that and plenty more coming up for you on the programme. But firstly, Newark Sconce and Devon Park is welcoming back some long-standing figures in its community thanks to the work of a local restoration company. After 14 years of standing guard over the park, 6 wooden statues were looking a little worse for wear when Green Key Restoration were volunteered to return them to their former glory. The work is now complete and Jack Sims went to meet them face to face.
A story that will whittle down anyone's wooden heart. 14 years ago, 5 wooden soldiers and 1 trusty steed were installed at Newark Sconce and Devon Park. The troops were made from Wellingtonia trees and reflect the park's Civil War history. But watching over 38 acres has taken its toll on these wood warriors, eventually becoming moss-covered and victims to vandalism. This led to them being removed and put into storage. Luckily though, these figures have been brought back from the brink thanks to the work of a local business, Green Key Restoration. They decided to give back to the community and repair these park guardians free of charge. Gary Wilson is a restorationist at the company. It was his son who first saw the soldiers' solemn condition, which inspired him to get to work.
Their overall condition, there was bits missing, bits broken. There was splits, and when they dried out they split even more, so we had to do a lot of resin work, making new parts for them, refitting old parts, so you've got to bring them back to that glory.
As for Green Key's director Mark Greenberry, he says that the work was a dedication not just to the community but also to the passion of one of their former employees.
Some people don't have the advantage to go to work, or they have mental illnesses and stuff like that, so they like to come to these parks. And we just thought it'd be a great idea if we could restore something like this, bring it back to the park, and people just come up and go, wow. One of the main driving forces of Green Key was a guy called Steve Key. And we lost that great soldier and great man halfway through this project, but I'm sure that he'd be so proud of us to finish this and see the outcome.
Park Ranger Simon Hill has been keeping an eye on the troops for 5 years. He says the work was just another great example of the community's commitment to their park.
We've got a range of volunteers and community groups that do wonders on the park. It was great to see these come from quite a vandalised and poor state. It was like the raising of the sort of like phoenix from the ashes. They're going to be on the children's play area. Children thoroughly enjoy the horse.
The Sconce soldiers will be placed back into the park over the coming months. But some of the men will be diverted to other Newark attractions to celebrate their triumphant return. There, they'll be ready to stand to attention for all to see. Jack Sims for Nots TV.
Right, we're going to head to Broxtowe now to talk about an ongoing saga involving bereaved families and council changes to rules around cemetery decorations. It's after Broxtowe Borough Council and the borough's cemetery services initially agreed to halt planned enforcement, which would have forced families to remove things like ornaments from the graves of their loved ones. This pause of 12 months was agreed upon in October, but now a meeting next week could lead to enforcement returning at the cemeteries again, with families likely to be asked to remove their tributes. Our local democracy reporter, Lauren Monaghan, joins us now to tell us more about this. Just remind us of the background, Lauren, if you would.
Yes, so it all goes back to October 2024, as you've just said. So families that were impacted by controversial cemetery rules, they started a petition, and this was called Save Our Cemetery Gardens and Memorials. This amassed about nearly 1,000 signatures in his first week, so you could already tell that it was quite a contentious issue. This was in response to Broxtowe Borough Council. They had a cabinet decision in July 2024 for unofficial surrounds. This basically refers to tribute items left on graves being removed from graves. So the first cemetery that got given a deadline was Chilwell Cemetery, and this was for January 2025. The council said the reasonings behind this July notice was health and safety reasons for tribute items left on the graves, and that the rules had already existed. So when I looked back previously, cabinet documents from 2009 stated that the rules had been in place, well, they'd at least been in place since this cabinet document in 2009, but the bereavement service part of the council had only updated their internment form. So these internment form, this is the forms families sign before they bury or cremate a loved one. They hadn't changed it until 2023, clearly stating the prohibited items. So this is things like fencing, curbing, bedding plants, vases, windmills, and glass and alcohol, basically. And then the leader of the council, Milan Radulovic, back in October, because it was causing such a controversy, he called for a 12-month suspension of the rules, so nothing to happen. And this was to establish a collaboration between the impacted families and the council to work towards a common sense approach. He uses this term a lot, and work together to propose more common sense rules, basically. Okay.
So what about the proposals now? What are they actually talking about?
Yeah, so since October, since the council and the impacted families have been working together, they've put forward these common sense rules. So some of these are, so the existing plots, if we go back to the interment form where it wasn't stated until 2023, the families were basically saying anyone that had buried or put their cremated loved ones' ashes in the cemeteries before August 2023, they can keep the plots as they are, so any sort of decorations they got, because they believe that they weren't properly made aware of the rules. They agreed that anything that conflicts realistically with health and safety, such as metal fencing that is already there, they agreed that they should remove things like that. But then graves after August 2023, this was probably the most substantial of the rules that they put forward, to have items within 2.5 feet from the front edge of the headstone plinth. So that was probably the big rule that they proposed.
Okay. So what's the council said?
So councils have to release documents a week before the meeting. So next Tuesday they've got their next cabinet meeting, and this is where they're going to discuss these rules, these collaborated rules. This is where they're going to discuss them. So they've released the documents, and it's caused some shock for the families, because the bereavement service part of the council is basically proposing pretty much a full rejection of the collaborated rules that were put forward, and even stating that some that have just said not acceptable. And they've said that they've received reports from people who are visually impaired and who have physical disabilities, that these people felt disadvantaged and obstructed by grave items. So that's sort of their reasoning behind it. And things like shattered glass, plastic, it causes harm, and from the council's perspective, they can't work around that even with these collaborated new rules.
Okay. And just briefly, Lauren, what about the families and then the council's response to that?
So the families feel disheartened, they're disappointed in how it's been handled, and they've got a lot of emotional distress about it. But the council told me that they've advised the families on how the cabinet system works, and it's going to go to a debate, so it's not necessarily that it's going to happen, it's going to go to a debate, and they're free to lobby their local councillor.
All right. We'll leave it there for now. Thank you for the update, and we'll see how it goes next week. Thank you, Laurie. In other Notts news, police have launched a CCTV appeal after Nottingham's Brian Clough statue was vandalised with chalk. The bronze monument, just off Old Market Square, of course, was targeted on Easter Sunday, April the 20th, with CCTV showing it being scrawled with chalk following a demonstration for gender rights. The incident resulted in council workers jet washing the statue. While police say they support people's right to protest, they've said graffiti is illegal. Anyone who recognises the people in the images on your screen can call them on 101. Next, 4 teenagers have been arrested after a machete was seized following a street fight in Nottingham. Police were called to Berridge Road West in Forest Fields at about 4 p.m. on Monday after the group altercation. Officers found a machete under a car nearby in Brushfield Street before 2 men, aged 18 and 19, and 2 17-year-old boys were arrested on suspicion of a fray. Nottinghamshire Police say they're now investigating what happened. They say anyone with any information can get in touch with them by calling 101. Right, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be catching up with Team Talk regular Charlie McPartland, all about Forest's final game of the season. That was Sunday just gone, of course. That'll kick off your sport roundup as well. All the details for Forest, the Stags, and a bit of cricket for good measure as well coming up next. Hello, welcome back to Wednesday's show with me, Mark Dennison. Thank you for joining us. Here's what's happening in Notts today. And firstly, a public consultation will ask residents in Arnold about plans for a new arts centre, library, theatre and leisure centre. Edinburgh Borough Council is pushing forward with its Ambition Arnold project, which would build the new facility featuring a replacement for the current Arnold Leisure Centre, Bonington Theatre and Arnold Library, as well as creating a new arts centre in the town. The council had previously asked but was rejected for several £1 million in government levelling up cash and launched a consultation on the plans on Tuesday. Next, the Deputy Leader of Nottingham City Council has admitted previous budget setting processes have been short-sighted as the authority tries to recover from effective bankruptcy. Ethan Radford admitted some mistakes have been made over the way the authority sets its annual accounts, but councillors have also said previous plans to balance the books haven't made sense to the general public. The authority recently admitted it expects to overspend by about £20 million this financial year, but is trying to learn lessons from previous mistakes. And the land near Mansfield, previously used for horses, could be turned into a field for dog walkers to book and exercise their pets. Plans have been submitted to Mansfield District Council for former horse grazing land at Woodside Farm Stables, which is at the end of Helmsley Road in Reneth. The land was used by horses, you're a good boy, for 50 years, but applicant Stephen John Parker wants to turn it into a facility for dog owners that would be made available for recreational and training purposes. It would have a booking system if the council approves the plans. Right, moving on now, and school children in Bulwell have been warned about the dangers and devastating consequences of becoming involved with knife crime. That's part of an ongoing Nottinghamshire police operation. The force visited Bulwell Academy last week as part of Operation Sceptre, which also included a knife amnesty across the county. During the visit, hundreds of Year 7 and Year 10 pupils took part in interactive assemblies around knife crime, with the force sharing a new video about the messages behind them. Have a look.
I've been at Bulwell Academy. We've done 2 assemblies with the Year 10 and the Year 7. It's been a very important week for us. It's the National Police Awareness Week, tackling knife crime, Sceptre. The students have really engaged well, and we'll have a lot of interaction with them, and the staff have been very supportive and encouraging.
I think that we've learned that, like, even if you don't do the crime, yeah, you can still get the same charges as the people that do the crime, so you just need to stay away from people that would steer you the wrong way.
My role as a SCIO in Nottinghamshire Police, I cover all the schools in the City North area, or secondary schools, and my role is mainly engagement, preventative work, so I go to school, do one-to-ones, group work and do assemblies. The reason why we need to engage with young people is because we're losing a lot of teenagers to knife crime, whether that's victims, whether that's offenders, and there's an increasing number of young people are getting involved in carrying knives and violent crime. One of the common answers young people give us is they carry knives to protect themselves, but what they don't realise is that carrying a knife is more likelihood of them being victims themselves.
Right, in a moment we're going to take your full sport roundup, but first it's time to talk about Forest. That, after their season came to an end at the weekend with a 1-0 defeat to Chelsea. That meant no Champions League football for the Reds. Instead, they'll be taking part in the Conference League. Now, we've got no team talk tonight, but we couldn't go without our weekly fix of Charlie McPartland, so he joins me now to reflect on the weekend's results. Charlie's here. Hello, sir. Thanks for coming on the show. Few days since that defeat to Chelsea. Mixed emotions, I think, for a lot of Reds fans. How do you see that result?
Again, mixed emotions. I thought Chelsea were there for the taking on Sunday, and I thought Forest were actually a better team. If they'd maybe took the chances they had in the first half, obviously it's going to be a different game. I was very disappointed after the game because we're thinking all the results have went for Forest and they didn't just pull it off. But when you sit down and put it in context, what's happened over the season, Nuno and his players have done an unbelievable job. I think it's been fantastic. And let's see where they go from here.
Mm. Overall, Charlie, I know that it's strange, isn't it? You've got that disappointment of missing out in the Champions League, but also you've got Forest playing in Europe for the first time in 30 odd years. So is the Conference League a good option overall, would you say?
Of course it is. You're still playing in Europe. Obviously, you would like to play in the Champions League, and they were so near yet so far, or the Europa League. But again, it's the start of the season. If you sit down at the start of the season and you're saying Nottingham Forest can still qualify for the Champions League in the last day of the season, people would have looked at you a bit funny. That's how far Nottingham Forest have come this season. And they're in Europe. They're in a European competition. It's absolutely brilliant for the fans. It's brilliant for the manager, the players, the owner of the football club. Nottingham's been buzzing all season with Nottingham Forest, the way they've played and the success that they've had.
We'll talk about what the squad and what the club need to do in terms of reinforcements in just a minute. I know this is speculation, but there's been a lot of paper talk, hasn't there, about possible departures as well, not least Morgan Gibbs-White. Do you think that, well, what's your hunch? Do you think he might be tempted to stay? They've got European football, or is he going to be tempted by another team higher in the league?
Obviously, if some of the big boys, the so-called big boys, start coming and calling for him to come and play at their football club, then wages come into it and all that stuff. But for to leave Nottingham Forest, it would need to be a Liverpool, a Manchester City, a Chelsea, one of these really big boys, an Arsenal. Because Nottingham Forest, I think, Nottingham Forest are a big football club, and there's been a lot of money invested, and I'm sure Mr. Marinakis will be wanting to invest a lot more money. So I think the City Ground in Nottingham Forest could be a good place to be playing your football.
What about incomings then, Charlie? I mean, it's no secret when you've got more fixtures coming around, because we'll have, the usual cup run, improvement on the Premier League standing once again, but also throwing into that more games in this Conference League, surely you're going to need a bigger squad, aren't you?
Well, when you look at it, the last few games of the season, you look at the Aston Villas, you look at the Newcastle Uniteds, you look at the Arsenals, you look at the Manchester Cities, and the players that were coming off the bench were very, very good players, and they were top players. And this is where Forest, I thought, just struggled a little bit. When they were making substitutions, I don't think, and this is no disrespect to the players that were going on the pitch, they weren't as good or as strong as the players that were coming off the pitch. So this is where Nottingham Forest have to get up to spec with the Villas and the Newcastle Uniteds. And I'd love to see Mr. Marinakis go and buy 5 top quality players. It might cost you 200 million quid. All of a sudden, if you can hold on to your top players that you've got at the minute, and I think they've got the basis of a very good football team to go and challenge if they can add to that. The lad Sangare was excellent at the end of the season. You know, you've got Gibbs White, you've got Elliot Anderson. I thought Dominguez was tremendous at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So Danilo, he's still coming back for his injury. You've got the 2 centre halves, Murillo and Milinkovic.
Yeah.
Absolute brilliant. So if they can strengthen on the flanks, a new striker, strengthen the flanks and add to that with top quality, I'm sure they can go and challenge next season again for the Champions League. And hold on to their best players.
Fingers crossed, Charlie. Have a great summer. Good to see you, and thank you for coming on this evening.
No problem, Mark. Same to you. Good luck.
Let's have some more sport for you now, shall we? And we'll start with Mansfield Town after work started on preparing their pitch for the new season. The Stags concluded their first League One campaign for 23 years earlier this month by managing to avoid relegation. Work now underway to improve the One-Call Stadium pitch ahead of next season in August, with the old pitch completely removed and ground staff beginning to repair the ground. The Stags will find out their fixtures for next season on Thursday the 26th of June. Staying with football, and West Bridgford-born goalkeeper Mary Earps has said the time is right to announce her retirement from international football. The Lioness was part of Serena Wiegmann's Lioness squad for the 2021 European Championships at Wembley, and also starred in the side's defeat to Spain in the 2023 World Cup final, saving a penalty. In a statement this week, Mary Earps said she's taken the difficult decision to retire from international football after losing her place ahead of this summer's Euros in Switzerland. In cricket, the Blaze lost their County Cup semi-final after being defeated by Lancashire Thunder in a rain-affected match. Lancashire prevailed with a 7-wicket victory, which saw Kirsty Gordon's Blaze sides try to mount a spirited fight-back, scoring 86 runs from their 16 overs, but Thunder restricted them to 13 for 3 off their remaining 2.5 overs to secure the victory. However, speaking after the game, Gordon said she felt their battling spirit would bode well ahead of the Vitality Blast returning this week. Well, thank you for watching this afternoon. Thank you to all of my guests as well, and to the team behind the scenes. Have a nice evening. Emma's here to do it again tomorrow at 5:30. Bye-bye for now.